Yeah, well, this is different.
Hey everybody, this is Perch, and I'm going through Marvel's events, and we're going to do a sales analysis of them. Now, if you haven't seen it yet, Civil War is back there a bit, and we're going to go further back, by the way. It's not just going to go forward in time. I'm actually going to go all the way back to Secret Wars, the original one, the Jim Shooter one. So that's going to be pretty fun, but right now we're going to do Secret Invasion. Why? Because there's a Disney Plus show coming out, and we love our corporate synergy here on the Perch Show. So let's take a look at this event. This is 8 issues. And I mentioned Civil War because this was the follow-up to Civil War. If you just completely forget about World War Hulk, which many people do, even though sales were not bad, but still many people do. So anyway, Secret Invasion was the next big event, and what had been going on is that the Marvel Universe had kind of shifted its attention a little bit to the Avengers. They were starting to get the ball rolling. You had an Iron Man movie out. You had more people kind of, starting to realize that you don't just have to do events with the X-Men anymore. And this guy, Brian Michael Bendis, had relaunched the New Avengers in a pretty kind of exciting, title, and it spun off into the Mighty Avengers, and there was a schism between the Luke Cage version. Captain America is dead. Iron Man is trying to check things out. So Secret Invasion, 8 issues. And like I said, this was from Brian Michael Bendis. Not this cartoon Bendis that he would draw into himself, but this Bendis. And before you guys say, hey, you're doing a fat shaming thing here. This was what he looked like when this comic came out. So I'm just trying to be accurate here. Nothing weird, creepy. And it was drawn by Leinil Francis Yu, who, as it turns out, is like a little fun fact. If you go to a con and you accidentally put a T in his name, called Lentil, he does not like that. So anyway, as you know, just to refresh memories, if you didn't go back and watch Civil War video, this is what the sales did. It was one of those interesting events where the title started out huge at 250,000 copies sold, more than that actually. And it had the predictable issue 1 to issue 2 slight drop, but slightly. 7,000 copies, not a big deal. It spiked back up to 290 for the big reveal of Spider-Man revealing his secret identity, and really kind of stayed 272, and then kind of was flat for a while, and then went back down to 259, just under where it started, and finished up at 265. It was a powerhouse. The other thing about Civil War, which kind of gets swept aside when people talk about the sales, is that it had a significant lift, that's a increase across the entire Marvel lineup. So other titles also benefited significantly in the year that followed Civil War. So it was a beast. So Secret Invasion, the big follow-up, how would it do? Like I said, we had Civil War, then we had this brief World War Hulk event, and then we got into the big one, Secret Invasion. So Secret Invasion, first off, it launches in April of 2008. It's going to wrap up in December of 2008. So it was really kind of this summer-fall event. This would become the pattern of what Marvel would do for events. It launches at that really strong, much like Civil War, 250,000 copies. So 250,000 copies launched for Secret Invasion #1. And then in issue 2, it dropped down to 182. So, Civil War did the same, but not nearly as steep of a drop. Unlike Civil War, this 182 mark is more or less where Secret Invasion would stay. It would go from 182 to 175. It would kind of sit there at 175 for a while for issue 3 and issue 4, then drop down to 165 for issue 5, 164 for issue 6, 154 for issue 7, and finally 152 for the end. So it didn't have the spike back up that Civil War did. It didn't have the spike at the end. It kind of started. It lost, about 70,000 copies of sales. There were a few more variant covers for issue 1 and issue 2, but really not many. We'll get to more of that in a second. But anyway, this is what the series did. It kind of started out strong, then dropped, and then more or less flattened. And when a title is losing 30,000 copies, between 182 and 152, it's hard to say that's flattened. In today's world, that 30,000 would be the difference between kind of a normal Marvel X title and 0 copies sold. But this is a different time. This is 2008. And as an event, this was still a home run. Not the Civil War home run, but still a home run. So here's one of the things, though, that Secret Invasion can claim that Civil War and other events, no other events, can. This comic held the #1 spot every month it was published. So every month it came out, it was the #1 copy of the month. Now, that was a pretty big deal in 2008. Hell, it's a big deal now because that just doesn't happen anymore. So that was a significant lift. Now, let's take a look at some stats here. From issue 1 to issue 2, the series basically had a 27% drop. Now, if you've looked at some of the other Marvel and DC videos, you know that because of the #1 issue spike, we usually see a kind of 30 to 40% drop is what's normal in the industry. So 27%, it's a lot of copies lost. I mean, it is 70,000 copies. But all things considered, that's not a big deal. If we go ahead and look at the entire series now, over the 8 issues, from issue 1 at 250,000 to issue 8 at 152,000. It's almost 100,000 copies of difference. The 8 issues of the series had a 39% drop overall. So that's more or less where it winds up. So, okay, let's give you a few more stats before we kind of wrap this thing up. So comics priced at $3.99 an issue. There were variants, like I said, but compared to today, it was pretty modest. It did do some, but just it was not the unrestrained, chaotic variants that we have now. So really, in the grand scheme of things, you're talking less than 10. Not the, it's weird to say, not a big deal, less than 10. Horrifying back in 2008, but in comparison to what relaunches #1 issues do today, not a big deal. $3.99 a copy. So the title shipped from April to December. It only missed 1 month, which was November, the penultimate, issue. But this was seemingly intentional as they crammed in a couple of their limited series and let some things, some of the crossovers catch up, which is what happened during in the month of November. The average sales, if you look at just average across all 8, average sales are 177,628 copies. And in total revenue, that's $708,000 per issue in total revenue. Now, that doesn't include what it costs to make. It doesn't include the cuts to the distributor, to the comic shop, to everybody else. But $708,000 per issue. Now, for this entire series, issue 1 through 8, floppies alone, not counting trades, we're talking about $5.67 million in total revenue for the series. That's what it's pulling in. Not shabby. Trade sales now, we want to get to that. Now, this is a little tough to determine. There's been at least 75,000 copies sold at trade. So, however, now here's where it gets funny. Amazon and Barnes & Noble and others have put in other sales. It's been printed in a couple other manners than what we're normally used to. So the sales are most likely higher. I think it's safe. It would be relatively safe to say that this has sold over 100,000 copies in trade. Again, that's doing some funny math, so it's hard to completely tell. But if you do assume 75,000 copies, we don't talk about any of the upside. We know there's been at least that, and you take the trade amount. You're talking a pretty healthy. Are you ready? Are you ready for this? You're talking a pretty healthy, about $1.5 million of additional revenue through trade. So this comic made money, I guess, is the upshot. Now, definitely Civil War sold more, and Civil War increased sales for the entire Marvel line. Well, not the entire, but a vast majority of it. It had a huge sales lift for a bunch of titles. Secret Invasion still sold great. Dark Reign, which came after, created line-wide sales as well, but it didn't have that same kind of lift. Bendis, now, he would leave for this. He would go on to lead several other events. He did, he did Siege, and he would do. He was one of the writers for AVX. But this was the height of his event career. He would do Civil War 2. That, of course, was not so good. Then would go to DC soon after. But this would be the one thing he had his name on, which was, as an event, the big one. So there you go. There's Secret Invasion. We do have that Disney Plus series coming out. So if you want to go back and read this, the TV series from Disney Plus will resemble exactly none of what went on in this comic. But there you go. Some really nice art from Leinil Francis Yu, which you can check out as well, which is pretty cool. And we're going to be back to do other sales analysis. Fear itself is coming up. That one, all these Marvel events during this time period, have a fascinating arc to them. And so you'll enjoy that as we get into it. But we're not going to do them all at once. We're going to skip in between. I think the next one that's definitely coming out right after this is Invincible, because I'm just hitting all the comics that have TV show tie-ins apparently. But let me know what you would like to see in the comments below. I know you are always very polite and patient when I do these, so please feel free. Like and subscribe, of course. Introduce to a friend. Point them at this stuff. Why not? And thanks for listening.